You know, Git isn't hard to learn, and Git mastery is well within your grasp if you've got a great Git GUI tool like GitKraken at your disposal. Hi, I'm Cameron McKenzie. I'm the editor-in-chief over at the serverside.com, and I've got to be one of the industry's biggest Git advocates. And I've put together what I think is a pretty amazing tutorial on working with Git, working with GitKraken, working with distributed version control tools like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. And I promise you, if you stick around for the next few minutes, I'm going to make you very, very dangerous when it comes to the world of Git, version control, and most importantly, GitKraken. In the next little while, I'm going to cover everything from installing GitKraken, but I'm going to do that fairly quickly because I'm pretty sure you can do that on your own, and I don't want to waste any of your time. I'm going to show you how to get started with GitKraken, how to set up a local repository, how to create a rich Git history, and very quickly I'm going to show you how to do things like reverting commits and resetting back to a previous point in time. I'm going to show you what I think is the most important feature of Git, which is its branching capabilities. So I'm going to show you how to create branches in GitKraken, how to merge branches in GitKraken. I'm going to show you how to deal with merge conflicts when they arise. And I might even show you how to cherry pick between branches if you're very nice to me. Now, of course, managing your Git commit history is the fundamentals of Git. You got to master that. Working with branches is what Git's all about. It allows for isolated development, allows developers to take chances, experiment, and break things with no risk for breaking the build. But, you know, the other big thing that we use Git for is collaborative development, being able to connect to that Bitbucket or GitLab or GitHub repository and being able to take our code that's local and push it to that remote server or pull changes down, clone repositories, fetch updates. And I want to show you how to do all of those things as well. And when we get that trifecta under our belt, you know, you're pretty much going to be a Git expert. Stay tuned. I think you'll really get a lot out of this tutorial, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my passion for Git and GitKraken with you. But, you know, before we get too deep into this, we've got to do the installation of GitKraken, and that is what we're going to do next. You know, there's a lot to love about GitKraken. One of the first things you're going to love about it is just how easy it is to install. All you have to do is head over to the GitKraken website, click on the download, an exe file comes down, double click on that exe file, it will do the installation, and then it starts off saying, hey, let's open a repository. It doesn't ask me for my username, doesn't ask me for a password, doesn't ask me for my email. It just says, let's get going. Now, there are licensing restrictions for the tool and should look at them for your organization. But for working with private repos, it's go your own way. So starting off, the first thing that GitKraken needs, and the first thing Git needs, anytime you install a new Git repository, install a new Git, do a new Git installation, is Git needs your username and your email address. So I'm going to add that here. Cameron McKenzie is my name. My email is mail@mcnz.com. I'll use those for Git commits. Now, don't worry. This isn't registration data. You're not going to be added to a newsletter. You're not going to be getting spam. This is used by Git. Git, every time you do a commit, Git needs to know the name of the person who did the commit, and it records the email address of the person that did the commit. So if you do something brilliant in your Git repository, anybody else browsing through that Git repo will know you were the brilliant one. Also, if you break the build, they'll know who to shout at. So that's the starting off. So I'm going to say use these for Git commits. Now, by the way, if you just installed Git normally, you'd have to do a git config user.name, git config user.email. That would then add those to the configuration files in Git. GitKraken's just making it easy with a nice form for us to fill out. Now, starting off, I'm just going to create a basic repo. So I'm going to click the Create Repo button, and then it's just going to be a local repo. We'll get into GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket later. Let's walk before we can run. just create a local repo. I'm going to call mine learn git fast. Maybe we should call it learn GitKraken fast. Where is it going to be initialized in? Well, you got to find a folder somewhere on your file system to put this repo, and look at that. I got a folder called Repos. That seems to make sense. So GitKraken will now create a folder in that folder that I specified called learn git fast, which is the name of the repo, and it'll initialize Git in that repo. It asks for a branch name. I'm going to select main. In the past, we used to use master, but we're getting away from that master verbiage. Main is the standard now. I'm not going to add a git ignore or a license. I'm just going to click that beautiful green button and say create repository. I'm also going to mosey on over onto my file system, and you'll notice that boom, we've got learn git fast there as a folder under repos, and there's that .git repository. Now you might not see it. I got my x-ray glasses on. I can see hidden files. That might be a hidden file on your file system, in which case you'd have to go, do the whole options thing and change the folder settings. But I've got hidden files to display. That's basically the binary embodiment of Git. Inside that .git folder, it's everything that is stored about your local Git repo. You can see there's config in there. There's a pointer to the last commit that's called head, log information object. So all of the stuff that has to do with Git is in that folder. Now you don't touch that, right? We don't need that. We'll go through GitKraken. You don't necessarily edit that directly. It's just good to know it there. That means it's definitely a Git repository. Okay, give me 1 second just to resize my screen. And boom, we are ready to go. So I've now got a Git repository. What do you do in a Git repository? Well, typically in a Git repository, you create a history of commits. You add files, you stage those files, then you create a commit for those files. Git keeps track of those files. So why don't we do that? Why don't we actually just start off and imagine we're a developer and we're going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this alpha.txt. And then you can make it HTML, you can make it Java. We're not doing continuous integration and continuous delivery right now. We're just learning the tools, so TXT files are fine. Now you will notice that as soon as I created that file on my file system, GitKraken noticed. It says, hey, there's a new file in there. It says one file changed. You want to view the change? I'm like, yeah. Let me see if you know what I did. Then it says you added a file named alpha.txt, and I'm like, guilty. That's exactly what I did. And it says, do you want to stage that file? And I'm going to stage it, and I'm also going to explain what staging is. In Git, we like to keep a history of commits. Okay? So a commit, I always say a commit is like a save point in a video game, right? You're playing a video game, you get so far, you hit a save point, then you start playing the game again, and if you die, you don't go back to the start. You got a save point you can go back to. Well, in Git, we have commits. Commits are like save points. So you can do a bunch of work, then you can do a commit. You can say, hey, I want all these files that I worked on to be part of this commit. And then you can do some more work, make another commit. Then if at any point in time in the future, you're like, oh, I did some bad stuff, and you want to go back to a previous commit, well, that's all you have to do. You can just go back to a previous point in history, go back to a previous commit, and then reset your entire workspace to that point in time, right? It's like a save point. So now when we create these save points, we specify what we want to have as part of those save points. So we may have edited 20 files, but maybe only 10 of those files we actually want to make part of a commit. The files that you want to make part of a commit are first go on what's called the Git Index. You stage them. Here I've staged alpha.txt. After staging something, you can commit it. And you always put in a good commit message. So I'm going to say first commit that change, and boom, all of a sudden, we've created our first commit. You can even see GitKraken giving us a nice little Git commit history there. We've got the initial commit when we created the repo. We've got the first commit when we added alpha. Now, by the way, when you do commits, you'll add more than one file at a time, but just to start off, we're going to add one file at a time and do a commit just to get used to this. So add another file, add bravo.txt. As soon as we do that, GitKraken notices it, views the change. Do you want to stage the file? Get used to this. You create some files, you edit some files, you stage those files, you commit those files. And this will be our second commit. So I'll make that the commit message, and boom, all of a sudden we've got another commit in our commit history, and you know what's going to happen next. I don't have to tell you. I'm going to create Charlie.txt. Again, view the change, stage the file, type in third commit, click the green commit button. We could do this all day. Now, I'm going to do something cool here. Okay, so we're getting familiar with creating a rich commit history here. Now, here's the thing. In Git, you not only create a commit history, you create these save points you can go back to, but you can manipulate your commit history as well. So watch this. I'm going to go back to that second commit. That second commit is where I added bravo.txt. I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to say revert this commit. What the revert does is it reverses all of the changes that were part of that commit. Now right now I've only got one change. I added the Bravo file, but watch this. Watch what happens when I revert that second commit. It says, are you sure you want to? I'm going to click that beautiful green button that says yes, and as I do, keep your eye on the prize on the right-hand side there. Look at bravo.txt because I got a magic trick for you. It's gone. Disappeared. I am David Copperfield right here. So this is what you can do. You can revert commits. You can start manipulating your commit history. I want to show you a reset. There's a revert and there's a reset. And you're probably thinking, what's the difference? And I'm going to show you the difference. But before I can show you the difference, we need to add to this commit history. So I'm going to add a new file here. I'm going to call it devo.txt. I don't know if that's the official name in the phonetic alphabet for D, and I'm going to go view the change, stage the file. Is that the fourth commit? Commit that change. Okay, the fourth commit is F-O-R-T-H commit, whatever. And then I'm going to create another file. I'm going to call this echo.txt. Go over here, stage the file, fifth commit, commit the change. Now we've got a very rich commit history. And I'm kind of lying there because it's not actually the fifth commit, because there was the initial commit, which would be the sixth commit. And take note, when you revert a file, the revert actually creates a commit. So you actually create a new commit saying that you're reverting an old commit. Everything is tracked in Git. It's super cool. Now, notice that beta.txt is gone here. Beta.txt doesn't exist. That was created in the second commit. But watch this. I'm going to reset my working directory, my work tree. I'm going to reset my working directory back to the second commit. I'm going to do a hard reset, and boom, all of a sudden bravo.txt comes back again. Right? Because bravo.txt was created in that second commit. I do a reset. I say, I want to reset everything back to the way it was when I did that second commit. Git does a reset hard for me, and boom, now I'm back to just alpha and bravo. So there you go. That's just some examples of how you can manipulate your commit history. By the way, anytime I'm done and I'm happy with my work, I always like to just create a tag. So one of my options there is to create a tag at that point in my history, and I'll call that milestone 1.0. Why not? Click enter, and now you can see that that particular branch, the main branch, has a tag on it at that second commit. That might be ambitious tagging this as a 1.0 milestone, but I'm pretty happy with it. And that's just metadata. So if somebody looks at your history and they want to see major significant commits, they can look at the tags that are attached to certain commits in your history. But there you go. That is that's a pretty whirlwind tour of some of the major aspects of working with Git and GitKraken. So not only did we install GitKraken, but we added files to an index. We configured our email address and name so that Git could track our commits. You can actually see there, it says Cameron McKenzie authored that commit. It's now part of each commit. We did commits, we added commit messages, we reverted commits, we reset our entire history back to a previous commit. We even tagged a commit. And so there you go. That's how easy it is to work with Git. And you can see GitKraken makes working with this even easier as well. Now, stick around because the next thing we're going to get into is perhaps the most important feature of Git, and that's branching. And that's what we're going to do next. Now, in my opinion, the biggest gift that Git gave to the software development world is branches. Branches give developers the ability to write code in an isolated environment that's separate from the work that other developers are doing. A developer can create a branch, and in that branch, they can break things, they can take chances, they can try to be brilliant. And if they do something brilliant, they just merge the code from that branch into the main branch and let everybody else see it. And if they do something horrific, well, they just delete the branch and nobody is the wiser. So it really is one of the greatest features that Git has given the software development world, and it really helps to accelerate software development and help generate high quality code. And I want to talk to you about branching right now. I want to show you exactly how branching works in Git. I want to show you the branching features GitKraken provides, and I'm going to do it through It's going to be through a kind of a funny scenario, okay? So let's imagine that I'm putting together a blog website or a book on my travel blog, and I want to go to various different countries and blog about them. And so I'm going to create a branch for each continent. So I'm going to create a branch for Africa, a branch for Asia, a branch for North America, a branch for Australia. And each time I go to a different country, I'll write some code, and eventually I'll merge it all back together again. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to need a new repository. So I'm going to click the folder icon over here. If you want to delete a repository, create a repository, you can usually find the option to do that by clicking on that folder icon. I want to initialize a repository. By the way, the command, the underlying command to create a new repository is git init. So you can see that the link there is in it. It's better than being out of it. And I'm going to call this learn git branching. It's going to go into the same repos folder. No git ignore, no license. I'm just going to create the repository, and we should see it show up on the right hand side over there. Boom, there it is, learn git branching. And right off the bat, I'm going to create a few branches. So I don't know, one branch I'm going to create. I'm going to click on the main branch here. I'm going to say create branch here. Well, I can't wait to go to Asia. So I've always wanted to go to Asia. So a new branch will be created. And then I'm going to create another branch. And along with Asia, I'm going to create Africa. Okay, and so we got Africa. Actually, I don't think Asia was created. So let me create Asia and click that enter button harder. There we go, we got another branch. And I don't know, maybe we can, create another branch. Maybe we'll go to Antarctica. Maybe we'll go to Australia. I can get a suntan in Australia. I can't get a suntan in Antarctica. So now we've got 3 branches there. We've got Africa, Asia, Australia, and the main branch will aggregate everything that's really, really good. And in fact, I'm going to move to that main branch. I'm from Canada. I live in Toronto. I don't know if you knew this or not, but there's a town just outside of Toronto, part of the Greater Toronto Area, called Pickering, and the Simpsons are based on Pickering, Ontario. I wrote a book about it. But I'm going to create a new file here, and I guess I'll say canada.txt, and I'll say inside my text file, I don't know, something along the lines of, did you know the Simpsons town Springfield is based on Pickering, Ontario? Anyways, go Google Pickering and Springfield. You can find my book. Anyways, the point is I'm just creating a little text file here with some content in it. That's going to be on the main branch. This recognizes that, hey, you've just done something cool on the main branch. You want to stage this change? Yes, I do. I'm going to type a little message. Hello, Toronto. Commit the change, and boom. Now we've got something in the main branch, just kind of where we're going to aggregate everything together eventually. But after taking a flight out of Pearson Airport in Toronto, I'm going to head over to Africa. I always wanted to go to Africa. So I'm going to click on this Africa branch here. Now notice, as soon as I switched on that Africa branch, the file Toronto or Canada.txt disappeared. Watch. I'm going to go back to the main branch. There's Canada.txt. Some David Copperfield stuff here, David Blaine. Go back to Africa. It's not there, right? So the branches are different from each other. I added something to the main branch, but I created the Africa branch before I added that file to the main branch. So the Africa branch doesn't have it. And I'm going to add a couple of files in here. I'm going to go in here and create a new text document called Nigeria. Always wanted to go to Nigeria. The Nigerian developers are the biggest grinders in the world. Shout out to all my friends in Lagos, best developers. I'm going to check that in. I'm going to stage the file, say shout out Lagos and Harcourt and all of the other cities in Nigeria, of course. So now I've got a new commit, and notice my commit history. I've got the main branch, which has got one commit on it, and then there's the Africa branch. It's got another commit on it. Australia are all kind of behind on the commits. They're not up to date with Africa or the main branch. I'm going to add another commit here. Add another file, and I will call this Uganda.txt. And again, view changes, stage all the changes, added Uganda. And so now you can see visually in GitKraken, it's showing you this rich commit history that's happening where I've got the main branch, I've got the Africa branch, they're kind of getting out of sync. And again, Nigeria and Uganda are in that Africa branch. Look what happens if I go to the main branch. The main branch only has Canada, but the Africa branch doesn't have those files, right? So your branches can get out of sync. Now, again, branching allows developers to do work in an isolated environment that's not going to affect others, right? They can take chances, they can break things. If they really mess up, they can just delete the branch. If they do something brilliant, we can merge the branch into another branch and share it. So I'm on the main branch right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and merge that Africa branch into main. Merge Africa into main. And keep an eye on the files in the file folder over there when I do that. Boom, all of a sudden I merge Africa into main, and now that main branch not only has Canada, but it's got Nigeria and it's got Uganda as well. We've merged all of those files together. So we now have that merge point, as you can see in the diagram, between main and Africa. They've come together, worlds working together. That's what I like to hear. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's take a trip over to Asia. So I'm going to go to Asia right now, and no files in Asia, right? Nothing in Asia, because we created that branch before we even added Canada.txt. Now, I'm going to go over here. Always wanted to go to Japan. So I'm going to add the commit here, stage it, hello, Tokyo. So there we go. We've got Japan added. I don't know, add another file, a new text document called Korea. Add that in, stage it, Gangnam style. Commit the changes. And now you can see like some real interesting commit histories happening, right? Africa to Maine. I think I can expand this. We can actually see a little bit more of that commit history action there. Now we've got Asia, which is getting a little out of sync. By the way, one of the cool things that you can do with branches is you can branch off a branch. So I'm on Asia right now, but why not create a new branch? Let's say I wanted to go to the Middle East, maybe that part of Asia, maybe branch off and do some isolated development in the Middle East. And now I'm checked out, I'm in the Middle East, and in the Middle East I'm going to create a new file, a new text document called iraq.txt, stage the file, hello Iraq, and then I don't know, maybe I can get some kind of visa and get into Iran as well. That might be interesting. So now we do stage the change. Hello, Iran. And I don't know, why not add Egypt in here as well, right? They're part of the Middle East. So we go Egypt. And then commit the change, stage the change. Hello, pyramids. Okay, so we've got the commit. So you can see this rich commit history happen. Now, I don't know if you noticed that sleight of hand there, but we've got a problem. And the problem is, well, I guess Egypt's part of the Middle East, right? But it's in Africa, right? So here's a cool thing you can do. I'm going to go over to that Africa branch. So I'm going to see if I can check out that Africa branch. So do the checkout. That's switching over. By the way, there's a git checkout command, but git checkout has been replaced by git switch. Checkout sounds too much like a historic version control where you're like locking files and you're not doing anything like that. So the git checkout command is being replaced by git switch. So in your code, day-to-day work, you probably start seeing git switch more than git checkout. But both of them switch you onto another branch. So I'm going to check out Africa. And now that I'm on this Africa branch, I'm getting a little jealous of this branch that added Egypt. And I'm going to right-click on that commit. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to cherry pick that commit. And what a cherry pick means is it means I want to go from my branch to another branch and not merge everything. So we saw a merge earlier where we took all of the files in a branch and brought it in. A cherry pick says, I just want all the changes associated with this one commit. I just want to take the changes associated with this one commit and pull them into my branch. So the Africa branch has got its eye on Egypt and it's saying, hey, I want to cherry pick that one commit. I want to bring that Egypt file over, but I don't want the Iran file, I don't want the Iraq file, certainly don't want the Japan file and the Korea file, just want that Egypt file. So we do a cherry pick. So do you want to cherry pick this? Yes, and keep your eye on the prize over there. Nigeria, Uganda, and boom, all of a sudden we now have Egypt. And so there you go. That's how you cherry pick between branches. You find a commit that you like somewhere else, you cherry pick it, and you bring the changes associated with that commit into your branch. It's all pretty cool. Okay, what's next? Well, I guess we got to merge all this stuff together, right? So I'm going to head over to main, going to check out that main branch. And what do we have? We could merge in the Middle East, maybe. Merge the Middle East into main. So the Middle East now gets merged in. And since the Middle East was a branch off of Asia, that also brought in Japan and Korea and Iraq and Iran. I think it brought in Egypt as well. Now I'm at a point where I've merged all of the changes in. I think I could probably maybe merge Africa in as well. Is that any other one that needs merging? Merge Africa into main. Okay, we've got that merged in now. And now we've got a very rich and very handsome commit history. You can see different branches being created. You can see different merge points. Now you finally get to the point where all of the files from each of the branch, Canada, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Japan, Korea, Nigeria, Uganda, are all now on that main branch. And once that's done, you can just delete your branches, right? You do all of your work, you're done your work, you merge it in, you can delete it. This is a destructive operation. Are you sure you want to delete Africa? Delete it. Let's delete the Middle East. I hope this isn't offending anybody. This is just a Git example. We're just deleting the branch. We already got the changes from them. We got all the great stuff in. Delete Asia. And look at that. You know, we never used Australia, but we'll delete Australia. And there you go. Back to the point where now we only have one branch. Everything is nice and clean. And there you go. That is all of the basics of Git branching. How you can create branches, how you can branch off branches, how you can delete branches, how you can merge branches together. Seriously, branching really is a gift to the software development community. And those are all of the key features that you need to know in order to be an expert with branching. Now, you may have heard of a merge conflict. So sometimes things go awry when two people are working on the same file at the same time. That's a problem. We're going to tackle that problem next. So the next thing we're going to look at is merge conflicts and how to resolve them. You know, merge conflicts are the bane of all software developers. A merge conflict happens when two developers start editing the same file in different branches. You end up having two separate commit histories in each branch, and then eventually the developers try to merge those two branches together, and Git says, I can't keep track of what this person did and what that person did. I got no idea how to merge those files together. Git gives up, it sends out a merge conflict, and then you've got to go in and figure out how to resolve this conflict between this file that two developers have been editing. It's a real pain, it's a real problem, and if you've got more than just a couple of files that are generating merge conflicts, you're going to waste a lot of time fixing those conflicts. Now, as far as I'm concerned, a merge conflict, a lot of merge conflicts is a symptom of a dysfunctional team. When you're working in Scrum, you should never have a team that has more than 10 people on it. That includes the Scrum Master and the product owner, so really 8 developers at max. And that's the maximum size of a team. Everybody should be meeting every day in the daily Scrum. If you're meeting in the daily Scrum, you should be talking about what you're working on. There's no excuse for multiple developers to be working on the same file at the same time, let alone multiple files to create multiple merge conflicts. So the best solution to fixing a merge conflict is to not have a merge conflict to begin with. But if you do have one, you got to deal with it. I'm going to click on the folder icon here that allows me to initialize a new repository. And I'm going to create a new repository called Federalism. Put it in the standard repos folder there, click create repository. You see it being created on the file system. And over here, I'm going to create a brand new file, and I'm going to call this file canada.txt once again. Stage it, call it the first commit over here. View the changes, stage the commit. Call it the first commit, commit the changes, and now I've got a repository with one file in it. Okay, well, let's create a new branch. So I'm going to create a new branch. I'll call this the other branch. Let's see, we are on the other branch, and now I'm going to go in and take a look at this Canada file. And on the other branch, I'm going to say, I love Montreal. If anybody ever gets a chance to come to Canada, go to Montreal, go there first. It's the most beautiful city in North America. You won't regret it. So there we go. I've created a file on that other branch. I'm going to view the change, stage the file, type in a summary. What's that? It's a second commit, something like that. Commit the change, and Now I've got a file on the other branch. I'm going to go back to the main branch, right? So developers are doing some work on the other branch. Now we're back on the main branch. Open up canada.txt here. Notice that the changes made in the other branch aren't here, right? The other branch is out of sync with the main branch. But hey, I'm from Toronto. I'm going to say I love Toronto. And even being from Toronto, I'm telling you, go to Montreal. I love Toronto too. So now I've got this canada.txt file edited, and it's edited both on the other branch and it's also edited on the main branch. I'm going to stage the change here. I'm going to go main branch addition. Not really an update, but we've got the commit here. Now we've got the Canada file on one branch that says one thing. We got the Canada file on another branch that says another thing. What are you going to do? Well, we can always try and merge it. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, hey, let's merge the other branch into main. And boom. It says, look, your merge failed. You got two files that are completely different. Like there's no AI tool that's going to be able to figure out how to fix I love Toronto and I love Montreal. Like either you love Toronto or you love Montreal, right? Like which one is it? So you end up with a file like this. It tells you what the state of the file is in your current branch, what the things are happening in the other branch, and you got to bring them together. And you just got to edit this file. And I don't know, I love Toronto and I love Montreal. There we go. That sounds like a nice compromise here. You got to get rid of all that junk in there, otherwise your code won't compile. I mean, it's just junk in the file. But this is your punishment for having conflicts, right? So what you got to do is you got to edit your files, fix your darn files, save your files. Then once you're done that, mark everything resolved, make sure your changes are staged, do a commit. This commit is now going to merge those files together. So it's going to overcome the merge conflict. You resolve the conflict, you fix the files, you did a commit, and with that commit you merged the two files that were out of sync together. We do the commit and merge, and boom, you see all those branches now coming together. So there you go. That's how you resolve merge conflicts. In fact, that's how you create merge conflicts. And that's how you can resolve merge conflicts in GitKraken. As I said, my advice to you, avoid merge conflicts to begin with. Anyways, that's everything that we're going to talk about in terms of branching, because I think that covers it from start to finish. The next thing we're going to look at is the collaborative operations in Git. That means connecting to a remote repository, cloning, pushing, pulling, fetching, all of the cool things we do with GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, and code commit. That's next. So if you want to master Git, you got to master three key things. One is manipulating your commit history with the resets and reverts. We already did that. The next is mastering branching and doing isolated development in branches. We mastered that. The next big topic, and the one most people are usually most excited about, is collaborative computing. That means cloning remote repositories, pulling down changes, pushing updates to the server, even fetching interesting information from remote branches. And that's what I want to do right now. I've got a GitHub repository, and you can see there's a project in there called Rock, Paper, Scissors. I'd like to clone that repository, bring it into my local GitKraken repository, manipulate a little bit, and push the changes up. So we've got GitHub. How do we connect to it? So I'm going to click on this file folder over here, and I'm going to say clone. It's going to say, what do you want to clone? I'm going to say, I want to clone from GitHub. It says, okay, well, let's connect to GitHub. By the way, I could just put in the URL to clone, and that would clone the repository down. Every repository on GitHub has a GitHub URL. But by connecting to GitHub, I'm actually going to get access to a lot of extra functionality, like the ability to use GitHub Actions in GitKraken or do pull requests in GitKraken. So I'm going to click that Connect to GitHub option. Click Connect to GitHub again and click it really hard. I've already logged into GitHub on my browser, so I was able to do the OAuth handshake from my browser. It says everything looks good. Do you want to open up GitKraken? I would say yes. I'm already there. I'm going to copy that token just in case there's an issue, but look at this. I've now got my user account from GitHub inside GitKraken. Now, the world is my oyster. I'm going to try and clone that rock, paper, scissors repository from my GitHub account. That means coming over here, clicking clone again, saying from GitHub. Now it's going to say which repository to clone. The power grid may go down here because I think I got a lot of repos, part of a lot of organizations. There we go. There's me, Cameron. Oh, thank goodness for alphabetical ordering here. LMNOP, rock, paper, scissors. Okay, clone that repo. So that's now going to clone that repo. If I come over to my local repository here, you're going to see rock, paper, scissors right there. So indeed, I've cloned that repository. Now I could go in and open that repository if I wanted to. Exit preferences, open a repo. Which repo do I want? So I'll click open a repository. I'll now just dig into that repository that I created. After the clone, rock, paper, scissors, select the folder, open now, and boom, I'm in my rock, paper, scissors repository. And you can see all of these files here, all of this commit history. Boy, this looks like a map of the Paris underground subway system, doesn't it? Looks mighty impressive, mighty impressive there. But there you go. Now I've just grabbed some files from a remote server from GitHub, and now I can do all of the operations that I would normally do. Once you've got the repo down on your local environment, the world's your oyster. So I can come over here, I can create a new file. So I'll create a new text document, and I will call that lisa.txt. Lisa, it's a local file, starts with the letter L. And then it's the same song and dance. Stage your changes, do a commit, added Lisa, commit the change. Okay, now that change is committed locally. The commit's created locally. But if I go back to the server and look at rock, paper, scissors, Lisa isn't there, right? So in order to take your changes from your local file system and move them up to the server after you've done a clone, you have to push. So I'll click that push button. It'll do a little handshake with the server. Looks like it says everything was successful. I come back to my browser. Hey, Lisa's not there. Lisa's there. Just got to do a quick refresh. And boom, there's Lisa right there. Now, I'm going to add a file on the server. You can click Add File on Server, and I will add Rita. I'll add Rose. My mom's middle name is Rose. So rose.txt for my mom. Commit those changes on the server. And now we're out of sync again, right? So how do you actually sync things up? Well, all I have to do right now is pull that down. So again, I've got Rose on the server. You can see Rose. Rose is not on my file system. I'm just going to do a pull. Keep your eye on the prize over there. And boom, Rose comes down onto my local file system. So it's all pretty cool. Now, by the way, you can actually add file. I'm going to show you what a fetch does. So I'm going to add a file here, create a new file, and I'm going to call this rita.txt. These are starting with the letter L because they're created on the remote server. Hopefully you're seeing the pattern here. Right now, I have created that file on the server. I could do a pull, but I could also do a fetch. Now, what a fetch does is a fetch communicates with the remote server, looks at changes, updates the remote tracking branches on your local machine. So it lets your local environment know about the changes. But when you do a fetch, it doesn't merge them into your workspace. You actually have to do a physical merge afterwards. So watch this. I'm going to do a fetch. So I'm doing a fetch and it tells me, hey, you know, up on the server, Rita was created, but Rita is not on my local machine. In fact, you can see the icons there saying the remote branch has a new change to it, but you don't have this change locally. So what do I have to do to bring that in? I have to merge the origin, the GitHub server's master branch with mine. I right click, I select that, and then boom, all of a sudden we have Rita. So there you go. That's the difference between a merge and, or a fetch and a pull in GitKraken and in Git, and that's all pretty cool. Now, by the way, one of the things that people often do when they're working with GitHub is rather than pushing and pulling, they may do pull requests. That's a good way to control who can push into various branches. Quite often when you fork repositories, you may, if you want to move code from a repository you forked back into the parent repository, you have to do a pull request. Now this has nothing to do with Git. A pull request is not part of the Git APIs. A pull request is only associated with the vendors that make this possible. But I'm going to add a Git pull request. So I'm going to go from the rock, paper, scissors branch. Actually, I'm going to push to that branch first. So I'll just push all my changes up. I'm going to go from that rock, paper, scissors branch. And maybe I'm going to do request. Boy, I got a lot of branches here. Do I have a learn Git fast, right? So why not? So I'm going to see if I can merge my master branch with the master branch over on learn Git fast. And hey, can you merge this? And all of a sudden I can now create this pull request where I'm saying, hey, there's some changes that I pushed up to my repository and I'd like this other account on GitHub to pull those changes in. Again, this isn't a Git feature. It's not specifically a GitKraken feature. It's a feature that vendors like GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket provide their users. So Git's very focused on its functionality. And it really hasn't changed much since it really kind of got polished with version 2.0. But vendors are allowed to add whatever they want on top of it. For example, you can delete the main branch or the master branch anytime you want. There's nothing special about it. You could delete that right now. On big projects, they don't want the main or master branch to be deleted. So they put branch protection rules in. There's no such thing as a branch protection rule in Git. But with GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket and Code Commit, they make those features part of it. So the vendors add on to Git, which is already a great tool. Anyways, I just did that pull request. And let me just take a look here. I've logged into my other account. Learn Git fast. You can see that's learn Git fast, and it says right here it's a pull request. So that GitKraken pull request from the Cameron MCNZ rock paper scissors account has asked another account, learn Git fast, to pull those changes in, and I can click on that and I can look at those changes. And my guess is that that might not be able to be merged in because I don't think there's been a merge between these branches for like a year. So that's a lot of changes. But hey, give it a try, and there you go. I make the comment and see if you can merge. So in this case, there's merge conflicts that have to be resolved. So that's probably what happens when you don't do a merge between branches for a couple of years. But it proves out the fact that that merge request indeed went up to the other server from GitKraken. So there you go. That is some of the more advanced features of Git and GitKraken. That's the ability to do collaborative development. And when you kind of take a look at everything that we've covered here, we've taken a look at managing a commit history, right? That's the Git commits, that's the Git adds to the staging, Git reverts, Git resets. We even added a tag the very first time we worked with the commit history. We've taken a look at branching, creating branches, deleting branches, merging branches, addressing merge conflicts. We've even taken a look at collaborative computing here, where we can pull from GitHub, we can connect to GitHub, we can push to GitHub, we can do fetches, we can share files locally with a remote server, and of course other users are going to be connecting to those remote servers as well, which means we can do true collaborative computing. This is a real whirlwind tour of everything that Git and GitKraken can do. It's an incredibly powerful tool. Anyways, I'm going to wrap that up there. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. I've got a lot more tutorials on Git and solving various Git problems on YouTube and the server side. I think I mentioned that earlier. I'm the editor-in-chief over at theserverside.com. So please, if you want to learn more about DevOps and Git and Scrum, head over there. As I mentioned earlier, I've also written a few books. So I've got Hibernate Made Easy. I've got Pickering as Springfield on Amazon. And even there's the Scrum Master Certification Guide that I mentioned earlier, which I recommend you get if you're interested in learning more about Agile and Scrum. But otherwise, if you're interested in my personal antics, please follow me on Twitter at CameronMCNZ. And like always, I'm going to ask you to subscribe on YouTube.